What if your grocery cart could help protect your heart? That's right, your heart health could be in better shape well before you get into the kitchen. But do you know what you should be looking for, and most importantly, what you should be staying away from?
Thanks for joining us for this Wellness Conversation, an Ohio Health podcast. I'm Marcus Thorpe along with Lindsey Gordon. To help us guide through this really important topic is Ciara Bartholomew, who's a registered dietitian at Ohio Health McConnell Heart Health Center, as well as clinical dietitian Nan Radabaugh. Ciara and Nan, thanks for joining us. We're really excited about having you because we always have questions about food.
Yes.
But we don't really know the answers about what to do once we get into the grocery store. So I think you'll be perfect for what we're looking for today.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much for being with us.
Yeah, we're thrilled to be here. Thanks.
Yeah. I think, before we jump in here, can you share a little bit about your roles and what you do here at Ohio Health in this space? Nan, we'll start with you.
Sure, absolutely. So Ciara and I are both registered dietitians, and we work with in the cardiopulmonary rehab program with Ohio Health. And Ohio Health has cardiac rehab at a lot of their facilities around the state. I primarily work with patients that come to McConnell Heart Health Center. And most of the patients we see come through, they've just had some sort of major cardiac event. So they've had a heart attack, or they've had major heart surgery, or they're going through heart failure. And they kind of come to get some supervised exercise with our awesome team of exercise physiologists, registered nurses, and respiratory therapists. And then we get the chance to actually sit down with them one-on-one and talk about their nutrition to kind of help them reach their health goals through their diet. And we also do some group nutrition classes as well.
Yeah, lots of group teaching where, everybody gets to sit down and we get to talk about recipe ideas, or we can talk about how do we, we even do talk about the grocery store sometimes over there too, but we look at the big picture with a lot of these patients too, because there's a lot of comorbidities that overlap with these guys. So we have to, deal with diabetes. Sometimes we have cancer patients. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, I love the idea of switching our mindset from sick care when it comes to health care to well care, of taking better care of ourselves during the well situations, and making sure that we're not only focused about medications. And, we talk about exercise a lot, and everybody knows, okay, I got to get a little exercise. What we don't talk about is how your grocery store and what you're picking out can actually impact your heart health. Let's talk first about that and how it can influence your heart outcomes, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nutrition is just as big of a piece of the puzzle as exercise and medications when it comes to heart health. I mean, we have lots of research now showing that kind of following an eating pattern that is high in minimally processed plant-based foods with healthy unsaturated fats, high in fiber, really can reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. And good nutrition, I mean, it really starts with what choices you're making at the grocery store.
I feel so much pressure at the grocery store these days because, it's not just for me anymore. Of course, I want to live longer, right? I have reasons to live longer now. I have my two littles. But then I'm also tasked with making sure they are getting meals that have nutritional value. And there is sugar in everything I feed them. And some days I go to bed and I'm just like, dang, I failed today. They had way too many, processed foods. Did we get enough of carrots or blueberries and I beat myself up about it. But then on the other hand, I'm like, okay, at least I'm aware, right? But I get so overwhelmed when I read the nutrition labels because number one, what am I really looking for? And number two, I see that there are these unhealthy oils and sugars in pretty much everything. So how would you, for someone like me, when I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm going into the grocery store with my list and I know I want it to be healthy, what advice would you have for someone like me? Where would I start? I know it's kind of a loaded question, but
it is a loaded question.
Maybe let's start with what to look for on that nutrition label. How do we decode that?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially from our standpoint here in cardiopulmonary rehab, we mainly look at a lot of the times it's just three major things: sodium, saturated fat, and a lot of times those added sugars as well. You can find them right there on the nutrition label, and of course, if there's numbers that we talk about with our patients, like what to limit, how many milligrams, or what's the percent daily value to look for. But a lot of the times we try to make it as simple as possible for them when it comes to reading the nutrition label. I like to focus mainly on the percent daily value with my patients. That percentage that's on the right-hand side of the nutrition label, you can't miss it, so that we don't have to pay attention to all those milligrams and makes it overcomplicated and overwhelming, especially because they have to memorize all these different numbers. What are their restrictions, and all that kind of stuff. But I keep it simple with like sodium, saturated fat, and added sugar. A low source is less than 5%, moderate source is around 5 to 15%, a high source is over that 20%. So a little red flag should go off in your head if you see that.
That's a good thing to keep in mind.
Yep,
That's
keeping
easy.
it as simple as possible when reading that label, absolutely.
What kind of like first principle do you think, Nan, can I take or can people take as they walk into a grocery store?
Well, I think that label reading, like having that knowledge, is really important because, I know that if I'm stopping, and getting fruits and vegetables at the produce section, that I know I'm making healthy choices, right? But once I kind of get out of that section and I get more into the sections where we've got packaged foods, a lot of the, that do have nutrition labels, that's when it starts to be really important that you know what to look for. And not only limiting the things that Ciara mentioned, but also making sure you're choosing foods that are high in a couple of things. So things like fiber, right? That percent daily value, if it's 20% or higher, that means it's a high source of that thing. So that we want something with protein. We want to look, that if it has fat in it, that it's mainly unsaturated fat. So those are the things we kind of want more of when we're looking at those labels.
What are some of the more common things that people overlook when they're focusing on their heart health? What are some of the things Marcus brought up the exercise part. I think when I think about my heart health, I think about doing cardio, physical exercise, getting my heart pumping. But from a nutritional standpoint, that's just as important, right? And what are some of the concerns that you have with diets today? Like, what are the biggest educational things you're teaching your patients today in terms of improving their lifestyle, improving their nutrition?
Yeah, I find that especially in my counseling sessions, a lot of the times, like, they've had these like major life events and they're thinking, okay, now I have to lose everything. Like, I have to not eat the things that I like anymore, and now I can't enjoy the foods that I'm eating, and that's just not true. It's just, we have to get that background knowledge when we're going to the grocery store to be able to buy the things that we still enjoy. Just everything in moderation, right? I say that pretty much every single day in my job. I feel like I should have it tattooed somewhere at this point. You know what I mean? But having that discussion where it's like, no, we're not trying to take away, we're trying to build kind of that knowledge base in the back of your head to think, okay, like, what can I add to my meals? What can I, to make this more heart healthy, to make this more fulfilling, more satiating, to give me more energy when I'm going to go exercise and build up my strength and my muscle? What are some great heart healthy sources of protein, heart healthy fats for my cholesterol, all that kind of good stuff.
Sounds like it's a mindset shift.
Yeah.
Absolutely, right? Very much so, because it's a scary situation to be in, and I have a lot of patients that come in and they're just anxiety ridden, and I don't blame them because this is like a major life event that's very scary.
Yep.
And so, we have to kind of sit down and make it as realistic and easy as possible. Sometimes people very much are like black and white. I'm ready to cut out everything and I'm going to go 180 degrees in the right direction with my diet, and more power to you. Some people are like that. But I'm more along the lines of, let's make realistic goals and changes one step at a time. And, something is better than nothing,
I grew up in a household with a father who had heart disease, a heart attack at the age of 35. So it was from that point on where sodium, salt, sugar, those kind of things, we started to pull some of that out because we knew the dangers. Can we talk about sodium and sugars when we're grocery shopping, and what should we be looking for? What are kind of like, what's too much, what's normal, what should we be looking at with sugar and salt?
Yeah, well, I can definitely speak. I'll start with the sugar part, right? So, sugar, we kind of think of it as not being good for us, maybe because it's raising blood sugar, it gives us extra calories, but it's also really important for our heart health as well. And actually, there's different lipid levels that your doctor will look at, things like your total cholesterol, your LDL, your HDL cholesterol, and triglycerides. And triglycerides, just like some other types of cholesterol, when they're high, it's not good for your heart. It can lead to more plaque and risk of heart disease. So one of the things that has the biggest impact on that is added sugar, over-consuming added sugar. So not only is that excess sugar maybe giving us excess calorie and leading to weight gain, but it could also impact those important lipid levels. And luckily, the food label tells us exactly how much added sugar there is. So lots of foods have natural sugar occurring in the product.
Like a fruit or something
Exactly.
like that, right?
Fruits have fructose, that's natural fruit sugar. Milk has lactose, that's natural milk sugar. But added sugar is specifically added in the processing of foods. So it's high in, highly processed foods. And on the food label, it will tell you how many grams of sugar, and then how many of those grams of sugar are actually added sugar. And as far as recommendations go for added sugar, the dietary guidelines for Americans says no more than 10% of your calories should come from added sugar. That looks like about 50 grams per day if we're eating around a couple thousand calories per day. The Heart Association's even stricter. It's more like 30 grams a day. And so it's something that we don't always think about with heart health, but that's really important.
Oh, yeah. How effective is like a food log or a food diary to keep track of all this stuff? I mean, I've been using MyFitnessPal on and off for like years. I use the free version, hashtag not an ad. But sometimes I punch in my day and I'm like, oh, wait, that had way more sugar in there than I thought. Or, oh, I didn't really get enough protein. I mean, is that effective?
It could be a very useful tool. I love them and I hate them at the same time. Just because, especially for my patients that have to rigorously track certain things, like my heart failure patients or my chronic kidney disease patients that have a strict sodium restriction of maybe 2,000 milligrams or less. And I've seen as low as 1,000 milligrams for some patients, which is really, really low. And so things like that could actually be very helpful as a tool to think, okay, am I staying within my daily safe limitation for salt that day? For some other people, it can be very, very overwhelming. It's a lot of work and it takes a lot of time to build it as a habit. I know that I'm not personally under any specific restriction, but I tried out MyFitnessPal for a while just to see what my day-to-day is looking like, and it's good insight to have. But I find that over time it gets kind of annoying to do it myself, unless you're building the presets and stuff like that. But it is a good eye opener to have, just to see okay, on my normal day-to-day eating when I'm not really thinking about it, what does my actual eating day look like in protein or sodium, saturated fat, all that good stuff. But it can be a little biased too, because if we're logging it, we might be a little more good that day because we know that we're being tracked,
And then what salt are you adding to your food after you make it too? And are you counting that as well?
Exactly.
There's some little small things here and there that could be adding up when it comes to your health and those kind of things.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about where we shop, right? There's probably more options now than we've ever seen, and there's commercials coming at us nonstop of come here or get this, food subscription. Traditional grocery stores, farmer markets, online deliveries, discount stores. How do you look at what's the right choice for families these days?
I mean, I think you can achieve heart healthy, grocery food shopping at any of those locations are great. I really think it depends on the family, the person, and what makes sense for their lifestyle. You have to take into consideration their budget, the convenience. So really, I think we can achieve healthy eating at any of those stores. Now, I think regardless of where you go, you're going to have to navigate healthier options and less healthy options. So kind of learning some of the things we talk about today on this podcast will really help you navigate that no matter where you're shopping. I can think of the farmer's market is a great example. I can go to the farmer's market over the summer. I can get lots of healthy fruits and vegetables that I can make at home, but I can also get like a bag full of homemade cookies and candy and, grab my lemon shake on the way out and everything else like that, right?
The tamale guy gets me every time. Do I need 3 tamales in addition for the fruit?
Yes,
I'm getting? Probably
actually.
not,
Truck
but I'm
on the
going
way
to get
out.
it anyways.
So even something like a farmer's market, right? We have to navigate those choices and know what to look for and what to help make the healthier choices.
Yep, I like that.
A lot of it too, when I'm grocery shopping, I feel like nutrition label aside, just what's on the words on the packaging sometimes I think could be a little misleading. I know that part of a healthy diet, we need whole grains, right? And so sometimes bread will be labeled whole grain or heart healthy. How can we tell what's legit? Is there an easy way? Probably not.
No, yeah. And I mean, taking the nutrition label out of the equation, we need it at the end of the day. But those front of the label package, packages with the labels on the front, makes it super duper easy, especially with whole grains. Me personally, when I'm grocery shopping for my breads and such, I like to look for the little gold stamp from the Whole Grains Council. Something quick and easy that you can look for. It even divides it into percentages, like 100% whole grain, 50% whole grain, or just like the standard that has a mix of whole grains and more refined or enriched grains like that. So you can always look out for that to ensure, okay, like this company's already went through the process and I know that this is a whole grain. But if for whatever reason that company didn't go through that process, we do have to take a peek at the ingredients list, that teeny weeny itty bitty font that's on the bottom, unfortunately, that we need a magnifying glass to look at.
Right.
But an easy way to put it is, if you see something like wheat, it could be more refined, but if you see whole wheat in the ingredients list, you can know, okay, like this is a more whole source like that instead. Trying to avoid the ones that say like refined or enriched flour, that's a red flag for a refined grain. Trying to keep it easy that way.
Yeah. Makes sense. I remember my mom would take us to the grocery store and she would say, okay, we got to shop the perimeter first. We got to work our outside in because we got to get all our healthy things. Is that still the case? Do you still encourage people to start kind of on the outsides where we see kind of our milks, our cheeses, our vegetables, our fruits, those kind of things? Is that the best way to start?
Yeah, I mean, those areas of the store are typically where you find like the most minimally processed foods or whole foods are going to be kind of in those areas. Now, if you're buying fruits and vegetables, you really can't go wrong. You're going to get fresh fruits and vegetables, you're getting healthy foods. Once we kind of get into, say, the dairy section or the fresh meat and seafood section, we have to be a little more cautious of our choices there because we get a lot of our saturated fat, which is the type of fat that can raise bad cholesterol levels, from meat and dairy. So with, say, the proteins, right? We want to choose really lean sources of protein. So skinless poultry and seafood, or, lean cuts of meat like sirloin, tenderloin, round, 90% or higher percent lean ground meats even. And then with dairy, we want to choose those low or non-fat dairy, like 1% milk or skim milk. And then eggs are in that section too. Eggs are one of those things, right? Back and forth over the years. Are they good for you or are they not good for you?
My husband and I have this debate all the time.
I had a nickel,
Always changing, right? So eggs are a great source of complete protein. And we'll suggest that to our heart patients as well as like a good source of protein. Now, the yolk itself has a lot of good stuff in it. It has vitamin D, it has protein, but it also has like a day's worth of cholesterol. So I always typically, if people are asking about eggs, if they're eating more than one egg a day, I just say, well, have one whole egg and then throw some extra egg whites in because the egg whites are pure protein. But yeah, I mean, chopping the perimeter is still great. I think it is kind of a myth, though, that there are no healthy foods once you get outside of that perimeter as well, because you can find some good stuff in pretty much every section, almost every section of the grocery store, I would say.
You didn't say chips, I noticed that. Not too much there.
I know. I think that's where I struggle, is like I need the stuff that's on the go. I need the stuff that can go in we've actually graduated from a diaper bag.
Congratulations.
I know, isn't that great? We know no more diapers in our house, thank goodness. But
it's a lot easier to go out that way.
It is, I know. But I'm still like, okay, we still need stuff for on the go. And I mean, my daughter only likes one type of granola bar, and my son only likes the yogurt that comes in the pack, right? And I read these labels and I look at them and I make sure I'm getting no added sugar, but and then I'm up against, when I was on social media, I was on like, the mommy algorithm. And so I'd get all these people telling me like, these are the healthy snacks I get for my kids at Costco. And I'm like, is this true? I don't know. So, Nan, I love how you mentioned there are some healthy finds in that middle section of the grocery store. And when I think of the middle section of the grocery store, I'm thinking of those on-the-go snacks. Help guide me there? What should I be looking for? I mean, you don't have to give like specific products or anything, but more like, what are some things to keep in mind? Of course, checking for added sugar, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, absolutely. Especially with snacks. Like, I'm a snacker myself. Like, I think snacking could be part of our healthy diet. Snacking gets a bad rap, unfortunately. But those snack aisles, yes, can be a little bit dangerous, especially like those chips and certain types of crackers and, the goldfish and the chocolates and all that kind of. Oh my gosh, I wish. But, of course, those are probably not the best options. And they are grab and go, but there are other options that we can think about, especially with my cardiac patients. I love a little bit of crunch with my snacks, so like lightly salted or unsalted nuts and seeds are always a good option. High in fiber, high in protein, lots of good heart healthy fats in there, and a little bit goes a long way. About like a handful or so, or a quarter cup is about a serving size. Other things to think about would be like whole grain crackers with some cheese slices that you can get, like the pre-sliced cheese slices. Yeah, throw that together. The main idea with snacking especially is we like to think about, try not to make it just one food group. It's mostly carbs, when we think about snacks, like especially those salty or snacky foods tend to just be a carb, Trying to pair like a carb and a protein together gives you a little bit more of a nutritional bang for your buck is how I like to describe it.
What about the dried fruits? Like, my kids love dried strawberries.
Yeah, I mean...
And I say, I'm putting this all on my kids, but really it's because I eat the snacks that I buy for them. So this is also, I'm putting this on my kids. I'm blaming
your kids
them.
Aren't listening. You're throwing them under the bus.
But I'm eating all this too, okay? So this is also self-serving questions.
Yeah, I mean, we think about, fresh fruits and vegetables being super healthy, but we can get fruit and vegetables in other forms that are a little more processed, right, but are still good for you, right? So I don't know if you're doing like the freeze-dried,
yeah,
strawberries. Yeah, I mean, those are just strawberries. There's literally nothing else added to them. The thing when we dry fruit, right, is we're getting rid of all the moisture. So like things like raisins or other types of dry, like cranberries, things like that. Because we're taking all that water out, we're really concentrating down kind of that fruit sugar that we were talking about, right? So you can get a lot more natural sugar in like small portions. So we just kind of got to watch the portion with some of those dried fruits. But no, I mean, they're especially the ones that are just fruit and there's no added sugar to it. Things like cranberries, they have a lot of sugar added because they're such a tart, right, berry that's one that I always get the reduced sugar.
Okay.
But it still has added sugar. So there are some dried fruits that do have a lot of added sugar. So kind of finding those ones that are just the fruit, I think that's a great option. And then you don't have to worry about refrigerating it and definitely a good on the go. Yeah.
As we wrap, I want to leave people with something that they can really use on an everyday, every week basis. So let's close by sharing some staple items that you think people need to get on a regular basis at the store or have in their homes whenever they are around. And then maybe some versatile foods that people can have that they could use for multiple purposes, for multiple recipes. Let's start with just staples. What would you suggest some families have constantly in their house that are good for them, that they can use pretty consistently?
Well, I know, like, for me on a really, really busy week, it's key to have, always have things on hand that are healthy but don't take a lot of prep time. So when I think about, say, like proteins, right, things that are shelf stable, things that don't really take much time to prepare, like reduced or low sodium tuna, right? A great healthy source of lean protein, or unsalted nuts and peanut butter. These are all healthy sources of protein, or even the eggs, right? Those are easy to throw together. Things like canned beans, another great source of protein and fiber. We can get the no salt added version. We can have brown rice that's pre-cooked, those pre-cooked brown rice, throw that together with some beans and I always have frozen vegetables on hand. They're nice and fresh, no salt added, cook up in like a few minutes. So those are some of the really easy things that I always like to have on hand to kind of cover all my food groups and just kind of throw together for a quick meal.
And Ciara, what would you leave our listeners with about just, look, let's think about this as we're kind of grocery shopping and finding versatile foods that work for us on a regular basis?
Take it step by step. Like, I know, like, at the end of this conversation, like, we're thinking, okay, well, I need to change my whole grocery list and, rearrange my thinking and all that kind of stuff. But I kind of like what I mentioned before, I'm all about small, realistic goals, right? So say, for instance, like, we've got kids at home and we want them to try different types of foods.
Yes.
Like, say we really like frozen fish sticks right now, maybe taking the opportunity to peruse the fish section over at the grocery store, get them to try something a little more whole, maybe breading it ourselves at home with something like a low sodium, like breadcrumbs or so, making it so it's just a little bit less processed with less added salt. That's one thing to think about. Really getting together as a family, picking like a quick and easy limited ingredient recipe that we all like, and just, checking it out at the grocery store and trying it at home is a good way to cut back on those like frozen convenience meals or packaged foods and things like that. But just picking one thing to work on at a time is going to be the easiest thing. Little swaps here and there, like maybe instead of full fat sour cream, we can swap to Greek yogurt. Give that a try, get a little bit more protein in there, less fat. Just little tweaks here and there. Make it easy. Make it less overwhelming.
I love that. I feel like I can do it.
Yeah, me too. This has been great information. We're so glad you're here. We hope you'll come back because we know we're going to get a lot of questions online once people listen to this and say, well, what about this and what about that?
Yes.
So we'd love to have you back and maybe tackle this again in a couple of months because I think there's always evolving new information and you're the right people for it. So thank you so much for joining us.
We'd love to come back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. I'd love for you to come grocery shopping with me.
Can we hire you to do that?
I know. That's what I really need. Well, thank you both so much. And thank you for listening to this episode of the Wellness Conversation and Ohio Health Podcast. If you're looking for more information on the topics we talked about today, or you want to find another episode, we have them all on our landing page at ohiohealth.com/the wellness conversation.
That's right. And you can subscribe to our podcast. That way you don't miss anything. We'd like for you to follow us on all of our social media channels to continue the conversation. And as always, thanks for joining us.